Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dissect seeds. I have bean seeds and I have some corn seeds. Now the bean seeds and this corn has been soaking for over 48 hours in water, so they have absorbed the water and they're swollen. These little corn kernels are actually out of the fridge off of a corn cob that you would buy in the grocery store on the cob still. And you can really see the tip cap where they were attached to the corn husk. Now the larger the seeds, you can explore different seeds to dissect. The larger the beans, or the larger the seed, the easier it's going to be to see the parts inside. So we're going to start just by making observations. Scientists always make observations first of whatever they're studying. So I'm not going to tell you what I see, but I want you to take a good look. Let's start with the corn. And look all around your seed. Just observe all the parts that you see. Okay. And you can compare it if you have different seeds. These are both corn seeds, but one is fresh. One is a dried seed that's been soaking. You can see the difference. And then here are the bean seeds. The part that you see here is where, just kind of like the tip cap on the corn, where it was attached to the pod. Now this one is starting to split. And actually it has absorbed so much water that it is starting to germinate. If you can see that little root that's starting to come out there. Okay, so let's start with our corn kernel, corn seed. And this little part here at the tip, that's just called the tip cap. We're just going to take your thumbnail. I've been painting, so my fingernails are discolored. Excuse that. So we're just going to take our thumbnail and maybe break off that tip cap. Try to. I don't think you need your... Also have a toothpick to help me dissect. But go gently when you're when you're doing things, so you don't destroy your bean seed. And just like when we wear a coat in the wintertime to protect us, seeds have a little protective coat. It's called the seed coat, and it should come off relatively easy. It's this really thin layer, and you may need take your toothpick, but don't poke it into it too deep, because we're just trying to dissect it one part at a time, gently. You may could just use your fingers. Just work gently so you don't destroy your seed. It's pretty shiny layer. Okay. Get it? So I'm going to leave my seed coat in a pile as we dissect. Okay, and now look at it again. So there's this white part, do you see? And then you have this yellow part. So what we're going to do is try to remove the white part from the yellow part. Now the yellow part is called the endosperm, and it gives the embryo, the baby plant, the future plant, nutrients for it to be able to grow. The corn seed is called a monocot, or monocotyledon, monocot for short. And we're going to learn about monocots and dicots in our studies. But you can just take it gently, remove the white from the yellow. much got the endosperm removed. And this white part that's left is called the cotyledon. Ooh, there's some more seed coat. Kind of sticky. Okay, and make some observations. The cotyledon also is the food source for the developing baby plant, for the embryo. Okay, and so in corn seeds you only have one cotyledon, and that's why it's called a monocot. And we'll learn more, like I said, later about that. So we have our seed coat, then we have the yellow part, which was our endosperm, and then now we have one cotyledon. Now inside the cotyledon, we should be able to see, it's kind of hard to see sometimes, it depends on how big your corn kernel or seed is, but there's a little kind of a raised bump. I don't know how well you can see it. And we're going to try to look at that, just that center part, because that is the actual embryo. That little tiny part right here is going to be what develops into our future corn plant. So let's see if we can't dissect it out. Now if your seed is too small, you may not be able to see that in the corn seed. But that is where I just removed it. But yeah, that little part there, and I probably broke it in half, is actually the embryo. And this little tiny part will use this food source, these nutrients, to help it grow underground, because it's not up above to make its own food with the sun, right, yet. So it has to have food source to help it push its way up through the ground. And this will develop a root and little leaves. So it's amazing that that little seed can produce such a big, tall plant. Okay, well that is our monocot, our corn seed dissection. And I think you'll see in the bean seeds, you'll be able to see the parts a lot better. But in a monocot, remember, you only have one cotyledon. Okay. Okay, so now let's turn our attention to, in these smaller ones, you may not be able to see the embryo at all because it's just so tiny. Okay, now let's go on to the bean seed. And this one, I had said it's already starting to germinate. At the point when it starts breaking apart and this little root starts coming out, the seed is considered that it is starting its germination process. And just like the corn seed, we're going to see if we can't gently pull off the seed coat again. Sometimes it comes off really easy. Sometimes you can take your fingernail and make a line down the back, and the whole thing will come off. But this little part here is just where it was attached to the pod. Okay. You know, beans and peas and things come in pods. You can shell beans and peas out of the pod. Other seeds are enveloped inside of a fruity, pulpy flesh, like peaches and apples and so forth. Wow, you can see the embryo sticking out here that was already starting to emerge. Now the bean seed should be careful and open it up. Now you have two cotyledons, whereas on the corn seed you only had the one cotyledon. So corn is a monocot. Because this has two cotyledons, this is called a dicot. Di meaning two. Alright, inside here what we see, the cotyledons will be the food source for the developing embryo, which is the baby plant starting here. This little part at the end here is the root, the start of the root that's going to come out. And then be careful with this part, but you should be able to see the little leaves, the first leaves. Let's see if I can gently, but this whole part is called the embryo, the developing baby plant. Oh, and this little bitty part. Let's see how much easier it is to see this than it is in the corn seed. Let's see if I can get that off of there in one piece. Yeah. Okay, so our cotyledons, two cotyledons, this provides the food while the baby plant is underground. It needs some food source in order to grow under the ground, and so it uses this up. Okay, here you can see the leaves. These will be your first two leaves to emerge. This whole thing is called the embryo. This will be the root. The root, the tip is actually called the radicle, and the little two leaves are called the plumule. Okay. So when germination starts, the root comes out of the seed, oops, or the radicle, and it will start to come down and make more roots. And this part will push up the two cotyledons, and it will push up through the soil. These will actually come up out of the soil. But as this food source is being used up, these cotyledons, they start to shrink or shrivel up because the food source is being used up by this baby. Okay, and then we've planted some seeds, or if you haven't already, we will, and you'll be able to see all these parts as they emerge. Okay, so again, let's look at what we've got. We've got our seed coat. Oh, wait a minute. I'll get mixed up with my corn one. Okay, over here. We have our seed coat, our two cotyledons, and we have the embryo with the radicle, and where the leaves were, that is the plumules. Okay, and we'll make a drawing of this later. Have fun, and you may try different seeds and dissect different ones. The larger the better, like I said, so you can check out how if they are different. Okay. Now, where do seeds come from? So seeds are produced in the ovary, and later we're going to be dissecting flowers. So the ovary is inside the flower. As the ovary ripens, its seeds become enveloped either by fruity pulp, like I said, peaches, or plums, apples, or a pod. So a pod would be beans and peas are inside of a pod, or a shell, and so walnuts and pecans, that is inside of a shell, right? So when you open up a shell and you're eating the pecan, what part are you actually eating? So you're actually eating the cotyledons inside. Okay? All right. And in the corn we had the yellow, the endosperm. Okay? All right, so have fun. We're going to plant some seeds, and like I said, it helps if you soak them because that helps them to swell, and the moisture in the soil or in the water enters into the bean seed, and the coat softens and it splits, and then tiny roots and stems emerge. So the growth process from seed to seedling is called germination. And in beet seeds, you'll see it takes about 14 days in beet seeds. So let's continue learning about plants, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Ta-ta!